Meeting to order, 5th March, 4 p.m. Finance Committee. Any public comment? Move into, hi Libby.
Hi, Libby.
Your preference, I don't know what your schedule is like today. Do you want to, you have a couple of things you wanted to tackle?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I'm expecting Brian,
Oh, okay.
but he is trying to finish things up. Did you do anything yet?
No.
No?
Okay. So let me just. See where we are. So as far as I know, so you guys got the warrant I sent yesterday, right?
Thank you.
And as of today, I've got, so yesterday we had outstanding 10, 11, 38, 43, 75, 77, 83, 84, 85. Of those, I have 10, Article 10 motion in as of today, and I was a little hoping Brian would bring it with him. So if he doesn't do that, then I will have to send it to you.
Okay.
I guess tomorrow.
Yeah. So we
but
just need to see the capital outlays before we vote on it.
Yep.
So we should have a table somewhere.
Yes. So that should be fairly straightforward. 11, I think, is the enterprise fund operation. So I don't know what he's doing about that. 38, Andrew got to me today, and it's a move to take no action on this article from the planning board, and they're going to have a comment, which they're working on. 43.
It's a comment only.
It's a comment
It's a
only.
comment only. Okay, so I'm just waiting for that.
What was the other one, 38?
Yep, 38.
That's the airport property?
Cherry and Pleasant Street.
It's a zoning article.
Oh, okay, I'm looking for the next, sorry.
75 and 77.
There for the roundabouts?
Yeah, these are for the roundabout. So Andrew, I asked Andrew what is going on with that, and he said we're not sure what the question exactly is. So this might be me. I'm not sure if what you all's motion is going to be on this, but I sort of assume it's going to be a positive motion. But
the planning board approved them, right?
they're not planning board
Oh, they're not?
related.
But I think Andrew, the issue is you guys need some, or the town's going to need some land for the roundabouts. And is there any intention of taking more land for cut-throughs from Old South Road to Milestone Road, or anything that in the future, or is this what you see is what you get?
Yeah, it's tied to those maps, so there should be a reference in your motion to the maps that are included. So, and those show just some little circles at the locations.
Okay.
You mean the maps that are like on file, those ones?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you get a reference into those? Or can somebody, or is the reference on?
I think what you mean, Andrew, the part that says.
Yeah, it's in here already, I think.
Tax Assessor's Map 54, Parcel 46.
Right, but then it says all as shown on a map entitled 2018 Annual Town Meeting, Warrant
Yeah,
Article 77. Yeah.
So I can do positives for 75 and 77. 83 and 84, these are citizen articles. And Andrew, you gave me an answer back, need map references. It's a small portion of Nobodere Ave on the west side of Surfside Road that dead ends. A 40-foot road wide is not needed here. I just
So
didn't.
Nathan took the citizen article and created a 2018 map, so we would just reference, I'm assuming that's a positive as well, and then we would just simply reference his map instead of their attachment.
Okay,
So where, who sort of, these things come up all the time. Who does the diligence on whether, from the town's perspective, whether these make sense or not? Or is this just flopping to us to, because they come all the time, they seem relatively innocuous. Maybe 90% of them are, or maybe 100% of them are, but how do you sort of divine that?
Well, historically, we put them all together, but then there was a direction away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're submitted as citizen articles.
Right.
So it really does fall to you somewhat to review them. If there's opposition or other things expressed, I think it usually comes out to a public hearing.
so Andrew, what's the intent of these two?
There's a small strip of land, basically in the dead-end portion of the street, that the abutter wants to amend their property.
I see.
So in this one, it's pretty benign. The
What-
street isn't a through street; it's a dead-end street. This is Belvedere on the west side. So if you're driving down towards the beach, it's a dead-end street that kind of goes into the wetlands there. So there's no need to keep a 40-foot wide street there.
I see.
It doesn't connect to another street. And these are authorizations. Eventually, when a plan is done, they go to the real estate committee. There's a report that's given to the selectmen when there's an actual process.
So it's authorizing the selectmen to,
Yeah. But I personally don't have a problem with the process other than the fact that
Have we ever seen the maps? I'm just reading 83 and 84. It just refers to a sketch submitted herewith, and
yeah.
at some point, I think, all the real estate maps were forwarded to them, but we can forward
They're
them.
online.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
I thought for a while that our real estate committee was supposed to vet these, but I was disabused of that notion when I,
By them.
by that.
They are more specific to the actual yard sales that come to them rather than potentials.
Contrarian in me today wants to say, let's not approve any of this until we get a better process, but,
I know.
what?
You just came back from vacation. Aren't you supposed to be relaxed and in a pleasant
Yeah, pretty mean. He's all rested up for a fight.
All right. And then we have 80,
So after 75 and 77, we got, that was 83 and 84, right? 85 and 86. So Andrew's saying that there isn't a butter, so these are citizen articles as well. There's an abutter who objects, and we normally don't get involved when someone's objecting like that.
I thought we voted on that.
We
Oh,
did.
They did? Oh, okay.
Oh, 85. Oh, you already, yeah, okay.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, the abutter came in, sat through our reading of the entire warrant.
Oh, was that guy that was back there?
That
Yeah.
nice man, yeah.
Oh,
Bless
poor
his
guy.
little heart.
Okay, so 85 and 86, not to adopt?
Yes.
Not to-
Okay. You didn't tell me that. Oh, 80, I didn't even have that down. 87 is the industrial land one.
And the chief had permission.
Right.
Oh, that's why we held that, because, yeah, there was some question about whether Chief Pittman had some objection to making that land available, because they had their own designs on it, potentially. I don't know if it was for police or maybe harbor.
It's a different parcel.
Right, so,
Or-
but
yeah.
that was the question, I
Yeah.
think, yeah. So now we know that they're not interested, they don't have any objections.
The chief, I thought it was earlier last week before actually Judy left, and said that the parcels that were there were not, he didn't object to that, it didn't encroach on what they needed.
Great. Okay.
Okay, and then we have a bunch of, all the planning board articles that have been, whatever.
The zoning, so if you want to do comments,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
typically would, to the extent that we agree with them, we would just have that.
Yeah. Did we not do those?
I didn't have down that you did them, but if they're all just whatever the planning board did, that's easy.
Yeah, I thought we just took them all together and,
You did.
yeah, we did, right? And we approved everything, yeah, or
Correct.
made a motion to support, yeah.
Oh, right.
Correct. Yeah,
Terrific.
you got that done.
Sorry. What's 68 again?
Is the water commission?
No, we haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay.
And I actually didn't have that in my email. But, sorry, planning board comments, so FinCom comments on planning. Okay. 88, I didn't know if you did that one or not. There was a question about it. So, I'm sorry, 87 is an adopt,
Not to adopt.
Not to adopt.
not to
Oh.
adopt?
80, no, that's 86.
No,
It's
87 is
86.
industrial land.
87 is the industrial land.
We haven't taken a motion on that.
Okay. 88, I'm not sure what that is. I drafted a positive motion, but there was a question about, I think we were asking David Gray if he knew anything about this, which he doesn't really know, but he did respond something to the effect of,
Right. He said that it would not adversely affect the town to give up that
yeah.
easement
Yeah.
because there's,
And it authorizes them, they don't have to.
This is the easement that goes to nowhere.
right, this is, yeah,
Discussion.
what do they call it, pilot whale or pilot?
Yeah,
Yeah, pilot whale. And now it's unused parkland behind the Mews for some
Yes.
reason.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Good.
So outstanding then is 87 and 88 and 68. And it looks like 68, coming from the water company, it's sounding like they're trying to respond to these questions they say the state has. I'm not sure what those questions exactly are. I left a message today for our legislators, our legislative liaison about it. I think he called me back, but I didn't have a chance to talk to him. He did?
Okay, so I talked to Mark this afternoon, Mark Willard,
Yep.
and just as I was leaving, he sent me, and I asked him for two things. I asked him for a list of the questions that they had, and then the second was, I wanted an email from Fernandez telling the water company or telling the town that in fact this could go on hold for 2 years without jeopardizing it, because that was a verbal, according to Willett, that was a verbal comment. There was nothing in writing.
Okay, so that's a little bit contrary to what I've heard from our legislators. And Brian is showing me an email that came in about 3:20 from the legislative liaison, Tom Dixon, saying it would be best if it were adopted if you want to keep it in the queue, right?
Yes, it says, he just spoke to Mark on how you want to comment, and they concluded that for right now, the best course of action to ask the FinCom to adopt the home rule, have it pass town meeting, and all the parties can continue to assess if the merger is the outcome desired. The bill would still be current in the legislative process until the end of the calendar year. If it were to expire, if later decided to move on, it can be refiled, but they're recommending that if you're so inclined, that you adopt the motion.
Yeah, that's what,
Pardon?
no, I'm looking, that was the outcome of talking with those guys. So rather than take no action, we would
Adopt.
adopt
Yep.
and keep it in the queue and not jeopardize. And then I will circulate their questions, so just for general interest. I don't know how valid they are.
And Brian, I think you had already answered some questions from DOR, right?
Yeah, well, Michelle had we had talked, and she had filed all of the answers, I believe,
That we knew of.
that we knew of at the time. I mean, we did get some questions from Michelle at Copeland and Page relative to that. We gave her answers, and I believe she filed those with whoever had asked for them.
So if there's other questions, we're not sure what they are.
We haven't seen, because it went financial and really.
Yeah.
So, do you want to dispose of 68 right now? Can we get a motion to, if everybody's supportive of?
That's the water company thing, merger, yeah.
To adopt, which would just resubmit the
Yeah.
formal
Motion to adopt.
Second.
discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Should be
All right.
Okay.
before I come to get here.
Okay, great. All right, Brian's telling me he sent you guys the
I just sent you
Article
before
10.
I left Article 10, the motion for Article 10.
Well, can we take that up tomorrow?
Yeah,
Okay.
because we need 11 too.
And how about 11? Are you going to have 11 for
Yes,
budgets?
we need to talk to them about it, that's the enterprise fund budget.
All right. Okay, so we have something to tell you about 11, and we need to update you about the sewer force main,
Right.
which actually we're going to do that tomorrow too, because the consultant will be here with the final number.
Yeah.
So we can do that one tomorrow.
Plus or minus 20%?
What do you mean? 20,
What's the
well,
number?
well, they've given us pretty much everything I think that we know. It's less than 5 million. Plus or minus 20%, hopefully.
It'll be in Article 12, we actually,
So it could be 6, it could be 4. It won't be 4.
Well, hopefully it won't be more than 5.
Okay.
So
And
the-
David, you know, I'm assuming David's been through all of this, maybe Greg and Rob or whoever.
Yep, they've both been in on all of it. David will be, if he's, luck is with him, on vacation tomorrow. Rob may or may not be here, but the consultants will be here, the engineers will be here. And I think once they can explain the number and what's all in it. And then I think the idea as far as funding is to do it through an emergency loan from SRF, no interest loan, and pay it back through the sewer enterprise fund.
yeah, so the language has been drafted to allow us to apply to the SRF for whatever portion they deem eligible, and then we would borrow the rest outside of that, but it would be paid back through the sewer enterprise fund.
So do you need borrowing authority
Yes.
through this?
We do, and bond council just barely finished writing the language for that.
So how are you going to attach it to?
Okay, we're going to attach it to Article 12, which is the
12.
capital for enterprise fund.
Okay.
Yes. And we'll have the number in that the consultants are going to come and talk about. That'll be included. That's why we're going to wait till
Okay.
tomorrow to do that. So we don't need a technical amendment after the fact.
Makes more sense. Okay.
How do we eventually raise the money? Just raise the rate for the sewer enterprise?
Yes, if the rate can be through user fees and charges within the enterprise fund, yes.
Any comments?
And this would cover all the 16 breaks along the way, or the 16, so it's not just for North Beach Street. It's the entire
It's
route.
for the inspection, it's for from start to finish.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And obviously, if any of it was eligible for actual insurance, that would reduce the amount borrowed.
Yeah, right.
And who
And is
ma-
it the belief of the town that South Beach will be open for business, like for the 4th of July?
That
Which
is the intense
Which
hope
year?
of the town. Yeah, which year? That if all goes well and the contractor's on time and there's no unanticipated conditions, yes, it should be open before then.
We won't ask for a probability.
No, don't
Right.
ask for that.
Plus or minus 20%.
This is to repair what's there as opposed to create a new one. that David has also talked about needing at some point.
The line, you mean?
Along the line.
Yep,
So
this
you-
is repairing the existing force main, putting it back into service, and at some point very soon, we'll probably start designing a third
Third
main.
Okay.
So I guess the only outstanding things then now are 80, what did we say, 83 and 84,
Do we do 75, which was the last one,
and 75, and yeah, they said positive motions on 75 and 77.
or? Okay.
So we should vote. We vote 75 and 77.
Motion to adopt Article 75 and 77 is written.
Second.
Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, 70, yeah, I guess that's not done yet.
There's a correct version, but that was the only change, right?
Yeah, that was the only change. That was my fault.
Do we need to revote that?
We didn't vote it.
You didn't-
Yeah.
Well, we did, and we were deadlocked.
No?
Yeah.
There's only 5 of us today, it's got to go one way or the other.
Brian, did you have a chance to review the email that I sent yesterday?
Um,
For the benefit of the people in the audience, because I know at least one person's going to be interested in what we're talking about, there's a sunset provision that's in the draft home rule petition. The sunset provision appears not to be effective if the outstanding obligations of the trust cannot be satisfied by money that's left in the trust's account when the tax is repealed. So if, for instance, there was an outstanding mortgage on some land that it had bought, the tax couldn't, or fee couldn't be repealed by town meeting until that debt was fully paid off, which I'm afraid might make it impossible to repeal the fee in the future. And then we're, effectively we're making the sunset clause ineffective and maybe setting up for a permanent fee, which, was part of the negotiation a few years ago and getting local support for the initiative was that it'll go away in 10 years unless a town meeting approves an extension. So I sent an email to David and Libby and Tucker and Brian asking, whether my reading was correct. And now maybe Brian has some thoughts.
I sent it to town council, and I haven't heard back yet.
Okay.
Oh, he did? Okay.
I mean, I think that the reading is correct that if the town meeting voted to disband it, that the town would still have authorization to collect it from the trust board until the obligations associated with any borrowings that they undertook, if they were to undertake any borrowings or obligations were paid, okay? But it's not, in my mind, that sunset provision is no different. I think town council would concur in so much as that if the town voted to disband the CPA, okay, the CPC, and not charge that, if there were borrowings attached to that, we would still have to collect it until the obligations were fulfilled. There wouldn't be there's no mechanism because that's the mechanism to repay the town, okay? So the question about creditworthiness, I believe that the language under 4455, I think is what it is, specifically grants them the authority to borrow money. They're not, in my mind, or my opinion, they're not going to be able to borrow money without the full faith and credit of the town at any reasonable, they have to do revenue bonds, which are very expensive to issue, to be credit rated on its own. So the town can vote as the provision allows to sunset it, but we would still have to we'd still be obligated to collect it if there's obligations outstanding from the trust until those were completely liquidated. But it's not any different than the CPA. I mean, it's the same thing. They've borrowed money, which the town essentially backs with its full faith and credit. And if we voted to disband them, we would still continue to charge it until those were paid off and collected.
But you also think that the sunsetting means that the operations of the, in this case, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, would have to, they couldn't extend new credit or they'd sort of have to shut down and just pay off the debt.
Any new long-term obligations, I don't believe, unless they had other funding sources available to cover those, if this was sunset. But if town meeting voted, it would be after whatever period was remaining on any debt, if they issued debt. That increased when it would end.
Yeah. So how is this different from the situation with the land bank, where we can't talk about adjusting the 2% the land bank collects because they have all this outstanding debt?
Well, you have to remember the difference is the town strictly pledged its full faith and credit to back the land bank's debt, which is different because the town also requires the land bank to have a debt reserve fund that covers the annual payments, okay? But when the land bank issues the debt, their debt's issued on the expectation that if the 2% is what's going to fulfill their obligation to pay it, okay? So it would be very difficult, because we have asked this question before, to change that for now, because all of those bonds were issued with the expectation that there was 2% revenue available to cover that. If we changed it, in my mind, it would potentially put the town on the hook to pay it if they were not collecting enough. So it wouldn't be, in my mind, wise to consider changing the 2%. Okay, I'm not indicating anybody is, but don't forget the town is backed up with its full faith and credit, and if they couldn't pay it, we're obligated to pay it.
Isn't that the same situation we're talking about with the Affordable Housing Trust? I mean, wouldn't any debt that it obligates itself to be backed by the full faith and credit of the town?
If they came to us and asked us to do it, sure. But they could borrow and issue revenue bonds if they wanted to.
Yeah, but they're not going to do that.
No, I agree that they're not going to, but just like in that provision, okay, we would not, I don't want to presume to know what town meeting would do, but the town wouldn't want to have to pay the debt if you sunset it, because it's going to, where's it going to come from us? I mean, the whole premise of having it is to be able to do that. So it would be my recommendation, if you sunsetted it, that those, and the language is written that it says that it continues, even if you do that, until all obligations are satisfied. So that, in my mind, says if there's an amortization table that's 10 more years, even after you do that, that we collect it until that amortization is done, and then it's over.
Right. So the sunset really can't be effective until, if there's any borrowing, we're not going to be able to sunset this thing for at least 30 years.
That's not necessarily the case, because it would depend on how we structure the amortization tables.
Well, and you also could
We could
penalty.
if they came and asked us to, I'm just talking, so don't everybody get nervous when I say this, but we could require the same thing of an entity that has the authority to borrow on its own of what we require the land bank to do, which is to set aside funds in a debt service coverage fund to ensure that there's money available to pay the debt, regardless of the fact that we could do that if we're going to pledge our full faith and credit. Whether that's something everyone wants to entertain or not to figure out right now.
And do we know, do we have a definitive answer on whether the trust can spend money on its own without approval of anyone else? I'd prefer if Brian or Libby did, but if you're the only one who has an answer, then of course I'd like you to answer.
Anything, the $1 million that we got a couple of years ago, we've been sitting on because the previous board of selectmen said they wanted it all for that project.
Right.
That's why we didn't touch it. We can spend one penny of that million, and it has to go back to the board of selectmen.
But what about future funds? What about anything other than that million?
Future funds, without that caveat, future funds, anything over $100,000 on one project has to go back to the board of selectmen. So we're not unchecked. So
so
if
I've-
there's something less than $100,000, we could do it without going to the Board of Selectmen, but we regularly report through the Board of Selectmen's representative what's going on every month. So we're never willy-nilly squandering any money or doing something without oversight because it's not set up under the legislation state that we can just run amok.
That all sounds great, but I haven't been able to find that written anywhere.
It's in the act.
So it's not in the housing production plan. It says exactly not that.
It's in our enabling legislation. And in the agreement that the selectmen, when they gave us, when the town meeting gave us the million 2 years ago, it's in that language at town meeting.
Right, but that was for the million. This is for everything else.
That's in the enabling legislation.
We can provide that to you. Steve.
Yeah. It's online as well.
Okay.
Could you push that out today, or at least give us a reference so that we can...
So that was kind of the thing that came up a couple meetings ago, and I think Chris said that he had read that they don't have to come back and they weren't accountable. So that's what my concern was. I wasn't aware of that. I thought they had to be accountable for every.
Well, right. That's an important clarification because the housing production plan says essentially these are, and I think it lays out 12 powers or something, to a certain number of powers of the trust that don't require anyone else's approval, town meeting, board of selectmen, finance committee, anybody else. So if you know if that authority to spend money without any other oversight is limited to $100,000, then that's good news in my opinion. And I'd just like to see that that's the case.
The production plan is a generalized plan of activities for the town in general, not just the housing trust. The housing trust happens to be the town's arm for
Right,
doing
but
affordable housing.
yeah, this section that Chris read at the meeting a couple weeks ago was specifically about the housing trust. So it could just be, incorrect.
Well, it's not incorrect, it just wasn't specific to the act.
Stephen, I think that the difference is that the language for affordable housing trust funds statewide doesn't have that specific reference in it, but Nantucket's was voted with that reference. So it says, and again, we can get to the language, it's in the enabling, when that trust was adopted by town meeting, that provision was in it, that there could be no financial transaction more than $100,000 to any one entity. So that was part of Nantucket's specific legislation. That doesn't apply to all trusts. There are many trusts that don't have that, but ours does have it.
Great.
That's what's different about our trust. I think, should give you some comfort on that.
It does. Thank you.
Can I just have one quick?
Please.
I think too that we figured out what the problem was in the warrant article, and I guess that's been corrected, that the sunset provision wasn't included in that, so that does need to be included in your recommendation.
Yeah, it's in the motion now as of yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So that's section 8. Yeah. Thank you.
So, Stephen, what's your pleasure?
Well, the rest of the committee hasn't had a chance to read it, but I just found the text of the enabling legislation, and I'll just read the relevant part here.
Specific.
Right. It says any expenditures by the trust to any one party in a cumulative amount exceeding $100,000 or donations to any charitable organization by the trust shall also be approved by the Board of Selectmen prior to finalizing the transaction. So that gives me a lot of comfort, and wasn't something that I was aware of before.
And I like that it's cumulative and not just one of. So it's not
Right,
all
you can't spend $99,000 and then come back next month. Yeah,
Another 99. Never done.
right.
No, nobody's ever seen that before.
Okay, so if we've got that in the legislation, I guess the other question is, do we, on the sunset provision, is there enough comfort there, and if there isn't, what's the revenue?
I mean, it's kind of obvious a sunset clause is a sunset clause, and we're responsible for whatever debt that somebody else might vote in, but it's obviously, you could have explained.
Brian, if the town has to pledge its full faith and credit to any borrowing in order that they're not paying higher than market rates, the revenue bonds, that means that there's some level of review by Board of Selectmen, by this committee, by whom, before we make that commitment?
Pledge it to the land bank and so we don't sign off on that. I mean, it'd be review because I would think that, like any other entity in the town that does this, that the treasurer and myself would be involved, and we would use Hilltop Securities, and it would be as part of the package of debt that we would issue, that they would, then the funds would be transferred to them for that. So I would presume that absent the land bank, we always find out what they did. We're not thoroughly involved in it, even though we've provided our full faith and credit, but we find out what their sales are, because we use the same place that we do. So even in CPA is another example where we've done it. We've been involved in the issuance of all their debt internally.
We did the bond at the ball field for the CPC and stuff like that. Right. And it has to be voted through town meeting, though.
Yeah.
If we pledge our full faith and credit to issue general obligation bonds, then yes,
Start here.
if they were to ask us to pledge the start date.
Well, it also strikes me, any project that's more than $100,000 is going to have to be approved by the selectmen before you borrow the money anyway. So it's not like you're going to be able to run up debt and then all of a sudden decide, oh my God, we've got billions of dollars here. So.
They're going to leverage the borrowing rates by going through packaging and through all the bonds. No reason why we wouldn't just sell it all together.
And the remainder may be expended
Then it would be instead of rating it all housing.
Right, but there won't be any.
It would be better.
In the event that the liability is an obligation of the town, Nantucket or affordable housing exceed the amounts transferred in.
They have
So
less
if
money.
there's a residual liability of over and above,
Right.
the fee shall remain in full force in effect until such liability as an obligation has been satisfied. So you'd continue to collect until.
Right. Yeah, so I'm satisfied with that part, and now it sounds like there's plenty of review that has to take place before the town's obligated to pledge itself to back these debts. So I'm satisfied there also. I don't have any other concerns.
Cliff, are you following, where are you on this?
Oh, absolutely. I thought this, I've gone through this stuff, and I thought that's how it was, but then Chris Kowacki came back and said, no, that's not the way it is. So I went, well, it's news to me then. So it got confusing.
So you tied 3-3.
Yeah, two of the no votes aren't here. Not that.
So who can
Oh,
bring it back?
nobody needs to. I think it
didn't.
just, we didn't get another motion, so we're just ready for a motion. And if you're ready for one, I'll offer a positive
Please.
motion to adopt Article 70 with the motion as written in the draft warrant we got yesterday.
Second?
Any further discussions? You guys okay?
I'm fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Anything else that needs to be?
Yeah. I don't know if we finished off 65. Was it a not to adopt? Okay, because there was that other suggestion. But if it's not to adopt, then we'll just use that. No comment? Wasn't going to be a comment?
Which article is this?
65.
Oh.
Wasn't this one where the other option was to refer to the government committee or something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
I
the sort of
thought
like
our
alternative
discussion
motion.
kind of got muddled, and it was like, why not just vote not to adopt?
Okay,
65 was not to adopt.
okay.
Yep.
No comment? No comment.
No comment.
What kind of push, will there be any pushback on this?
No. No.
Okay.
66, did you finish that off? I'm sorry, I think I left a little early to your last meeting, and whatever you did after I left, no one ever told me, so.
No, I think we were looking for more clarification on what the funds could be used for that would be raised from the Parking Benefit District.
All right, and did I forward you the town council email about that?
Yeah.
I thought we moved.
Oh, we did. So we're done.
Okay.
Good. And then the clarification was this money could probably be used for a garage,
Yep, yep.
if somebody might be thinking that.
Did you do a comment for Article 35? That was the $30 million override?
We are working on it, and I think Joe's got some
Okay.
draft language for us to explore.
All right, what about,
Are the selectmen going to sit this one out?
30 million
35?
override?
35?
I don't know. They're talking about their comments on Wednesday, but they haven't talked about it yet. So they may be relying on you. Thank you.
Okay.
So then, I think we've gone through all my things. So what I have down as outstanding to check in is 10 and 11, which we do need to talk about 11. And 12. 12 is just the outstanding sewer repair matter.
Is there anything changed on 11 from what we've heard?
Yes.
So let's tell you that in a second. It's about the
Okay.
island home. 35, you're gonna work on that comment hopefully now. 83, 84, and 88. So 11, Brian, you want to give a little update about 11?
So, the reason I wasn't on that, we're working extremely hard to revise the Ireland home budget because there's been a reduction in the number of beds. And it revolves around how to reduce the revenue. We're not going to be able to get to the number that we originally thought based on the reduction of beds. So Rachel has been working diligently, talking to the unions about how we're going to accomplish this reduction. She sent a plan, I think late Friday, which I still have, we talked a little bit more about today. But there's going to be a reduction of expenditures to match the reduction in revenue. That will be
On a dollar-for-dollar basis?
as close as we can get to that, yes. Some of it may have to be, a little bit of it might be absorbed by retained earnings, just to, but as close to that as possible, yes.
And was this a further reduction from
It's
the
a reduction.
35?
40, or?
It's a reduction from the 40 that we're currently at, or where it was originally when we came to you.
Yeah,
Based
down
on,
to what?
it's planning for approximately 36 or 37.
Okay, so you'll turn those back in so you don't pay
That's
the
plan,
Medicaid
yes.
charge? Yes.
And the reason that we might end up, may not be a pure dollar for dollar, is that we may leave a slight amount of flexibility in case something happens in that situation that we can't obviously see happening today. So we're working as best we can to move fast so we have this in hand. So that's why we're waiting until March to present that final numbers.
And is your new administrator involved in this? I assume she has started.
He
I'm sorry.
He's not starting yet.
But
He
has
starts
been involved in this.
in a couple weeks. Did I send you the email about
You did.
meeting him? Okay.
13. Tuesday.
Yes. Yep.
But I do know that he has been involved, Rachel has been communicating and sending him the documents to review, so I do know that he has been involved in these discussions.
Where does he come from?
He comes from a home in, a nursing facility in Revere. And he's got, you know what, I could send you his resume. and
Okay,
you can
thank you.
have his background.
But otherwise, all the rest of the budgets?
All the rest of them are the same as what was discussed on that Thursday or Saturday.
So is the water company didn't go back and do anything?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So will they be done, will you have them tomorrow, or are you still
Yes.
going to be working on?
No, I'm going to finish, Rachel and I are going to.
You need more, I mean, if you need more time, can you submit it without?
No, because we'd have to do a technical amendment, and I would prefer not to, quite frankly. So we talked today to get pretty much to a final number, and we're just going to go through it one more time and plug that. So I prefer to give them all to you once and get it done.
And do you anticipate that your deficit is going to increase?
Well, we won't have a deficit when we present the budget to you tomorrow. I don't anticipate that, I mean, hopefully we won't be worse than what we're looking at right now.
Here's the vote.
Yeah.
Comment? Denise?
No.
No.
Good? You were our rep on the committee?
Yeah, I just don't, I mean, so we're going to basically go in another direction now. We're going to start the downsizing of the
Well,
island.
I think that the reality that we face is that I would never be able to get the tax rate certified with the revenue numbers knowingly substantially less than we were budgeting, because DOR won't let me go in the opposite direction if this year's actuals are substantially below where we're trying to do. So we're faced with the reality that we don't have the revenue numbers to support the budget that we have. And we can't drain all of retained earnings, and, it doesn't, so that's the direction that we have to go in to be able to manage this.
But it's
And that's where the
fundamentally.
trend is right now.
Yeah, it's fundamentally a market problem. I mean, this isn't
I thought we were turning people away because we didn't have a nurse, so we couldn't hire another nurse, or we didn't have staffing.
We have had trouble with staffing, but that's not why.
this is a
There's-
market
Yeah,
issue.
there's just no one filling the beds.
Change it.
What are the rooms, what's going to be the purpose of the rooms? Will they be storage, or what happens to them?
I'm not sure that's, I would say that's not in my.
Well,
purview,
that's
but they're doing
actually
it.
my question, what can you do with them? I mean,
I think the long-term idea is that we'll make some sort of improvements to the facility and they'll be filled. But right at the moment, since we don't have anybody to fill them, they're just out of service. I don't know. We got to be a little bit careful about what we might turn them into, because you want to be sure you can put them back into service if you need to without going through a determination of need, which could be triggered potentially if you turn the rooms into something totally different.
right. Yeah, you don't want a major rehab, but
Yeah, exactly.
And in terms of number of beds, what was the max capacity? 45?
45.
So they don't, Rachel had already town has already downsized it from 45 to 40, and this is a further 3 to 4 bed
Yep.
reduction from that. Okay.
Anything else?
That is all I have. Do you want to look at your motion here? Or your comment?
maybe we could take action on a couple of these, like 83 and 84, and maybe 88 also, I think.
That'd be great.
I don't know how you want to take them. But I have positive motions ready to go on all three.
Which ones are those, 83?
83, 84, and 88.
Dyslexic.
Okay.
take them all at once?
Sure.
Sure.
No motions?
It's a motion to adopt Articles 83, 84, and 88 with the draft motions as written in the warrant.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Did we do anything on 87 yet? No.
No.
Oh, I thought,
That's the industrial one.
yeah.
You guys, I didn't even hear from.
Right.
Pittman.
Or, I know that question was asked. Did we not act on it last time because we were waiting to hear from
Yeah.
Chief Pittman?
I think
Okay.
so.
So, I guess John Trudell, was it John Trudell who came and stood in?
A couple weeks ago,
Scott?
several weeks ago.
I don't remember. Jeff Smith was here.
Or Jeff Smith, that's
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
was. So, he invited me to come and look at these parcels, which I did. Since I haven't spent a lot of time out in that area, what a mishmash of stuff out there. It's becoming our own Kowalski property. Andrew, can't you fix that, please? And so, you know, part of the question there, and it was part of our, when we did our public hearing on the citizen articles, was the appetite for the town to, you know, do something like an industrial park. I put that in quotes. And, you know, not necessarily to ask the town to take on yet another special kind of project, but has there been any discussion about that? Is this the kind of thing that, where rather than doing it on a sort of a piecemeal basis, that maybe, you know, we bite the bullet on this and do something that lays out this land and puts a good leasing program together? I mean, there's clearly a need.
Yeah, we have talked about it, and this is going to require additional resources. And I agree with something more along the lines of a more comprehensive plan for the area. But we don't have the resources or the capability right now to manage individual leases of this property. And not only just putting it out to bid, but figuring out what we want to have in the bid, and then, like I said, managing however many individual leases there are. That's a lot of work that isn't in anybody's capacity right now. So one of the things we talked about was doing a bid for someone else to manage the whole thing, which is still another fairly significant effort to put together, and we just haven't had the resources to do it. So if this passes, and if the Board of Selectmen makes this finding or agrees that we should do it, then we'll have to figure out how to work it in, but something else is going to have to not happen while we're doing it.
Is this property like across from Miles Reese on the right-hand side of the road? That's that raw land? Wouldn't we need, for liability reasons, to produce roads and drainage, and you just can't say, okay?
Yeah, there need to be a lot of infrastructure put in. Well, I don't know about a lot. Some amount of infrastructure put in, which potentially could be assigned to this management group or whatever, but
Was there a real estate position? I can't remember, or did that not get funded this year?
okay. It's not a position. It would be a contracted
Yeah, okay.
thing for a year. So maybe if we can find anybody, that might be able to happen. But I hope people wouldn't think that even if this passes and even if we get that position, you know, that's months away, if not a year, at least. Now, that all being said, I don't think anybody disputes that there's a need.
Yeah. But it seems to me that, you know, there's an opportunity here for the town to collect some rent,
Yeah.
and maybe also from the improved properties, some tax revenue, you know, which could go to pay for this new position, whether it's contract or full salary. And then this is a big job maybe to manage these leases, but it's not a full-time job. So there's some, you know, ancillary benefit to the town. You know, we're not just creating something just to pay for a position. That position could do a lot more. I mean, I hear you Libby, that there's a lot of priorities. Everything's a priority in the town, so this doesn't rise to the top of the stack quickly, but, it's a need, and I think the town stands to benefit.
Yeah, maybe if we put a little kind of a group together, maybe one or two of you and
Or couldn't an existing
Staff.
property management company bid on this? I mean, we must
Yeah.
have property managers
Yeah, I think
on
it's more of a
island.
procurement
That's
issue,
it.
putting together that package, and then,
Say,
Yeah.
for this, we can do this.
right, and then,
and some kind of revenue projection based on, maybe we look at what the airport charges and that. kind of
right.
thing.
Yeah, I think you can create a situation where the town benefits, the town takes more in revenue than it pays the staff person, and also there's money in it for the private company who runs it.
Yeah.
And it meets an urgent need on island for
Right.
folks.
Well, just to make sure I understand the urgent need, and the situation is there are a bunch of small businesses, landscapers, small contractors who need to store large pieces of equipment, who are losing their better deal economically leases in the Gilwackee area, and are looking for the town to sort of step in and offer economically attractive leasing as opposed to what the airport has been willing to rent the land for. I mean, is that kind of
Yeah,
the
and
macro view?
It's that, and it's their lack of availability, period.
And the
It's-
sizes of the.
Right.
Right, they
Yes.
need
Yeah,
small
small
tracts as opposed
parcels.
to bigger pieces.
Correct.
and-
Yeah.
So they don't even have
And so
availability.
they're sort of looking for
of-
the town to say, well, why don't you rent us the land at inexpensive rates?
But we still have to do the same to dispose of that. There's a lot of work that has to be done. We still have to get appraisals done on what it would be, what we could lease it for and everything. It's not just a matter of giving them really great deals on leases. We still have to follow procurement law and how it would be, a lease would be disposed of.
So it may end up being a price that they're going to, just like the airport, where they come back and say, gee, this
Yeah,
isn't as good a deal as I got at Gilwackee. I mean,
When we talked about it with Jeff Smith, I mean, the prices that the airport got on an appraisal, and
Right.
they're not getting any bids, so either,
They actually did when they lowered it.
Right, they just put it back out at $2.10 a square foot, where it was at $3 before. Yeah, so now people are interested.
okay. So they discovered.
Appraisals can be wrong.
Yeah.
Right, but unlike the Bunker Road airport property, they have fencing, they have access. This thing's just raw stumps and bushes. There's no, there's still not enough infrastructure to
Yeah, it would,
lease.
yeah, right. It needs a lot of fix-up.
So, is it correct to suggest that there's a high degree of probability this will get called if we don't make a favorable motion, and that it will get voted on? That there'll be
Regardless.
enough emotional support to do this, in which case you're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And so anticipating that, is there something that we preemptively could say? Like, take no action or not to adopt with the comment that this is what we're going to put in place?
Or you say adopt, but caveat, something along the lines of, this needs a lot of work and it's not going to happen right away.
Well, this is just authorizing the Board of Selectmen
Yeah.
to do it anyway.
Right.
So they
Right.
could say,
So, yeah.
okay, good idea, but it's not ready for prime time. We need 6 months or a year to study it.
Yeah.
Put a plan in place. I don't see any harm in giving the authority to the board to do this.
Maybe you do a comment, or maybe even the selectmen do a comment, I don't know who, sort of along the lines of what we've been saying here. We understand that there's a need for this sort of
Yeah, I mean,
area, but
the real estate group,
Yeah.
the finance committee, and the Board of Selectmen can each put one member, on a work group for however long it takes to come up with a plan.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a year-long job, but somebody's got to do it, so they need to be tasked with it.
So we move to adopt it with a comment that says the work group has to come up with a business plan for how this real estate will be managed and leased to the, something
The
like that.
town convene a group to develop a business plan for the
Or,
execution.
or maybe don't even be that specific, just something along the lines of, we recommend that the town develop a more comprehensive plan for this area that is,
Prior to any
properly
leasing or
managed.
disposing of it.
Yes, yes.
So it's sort of it asks the selectmen to have the plan before they take a vote on it, which if it takes them 2 years to deliver.
Right.
Right. So, with the presumption that Libby has a pretty good sense of what the comment sounds like, I'll move to adopt on that basis.
Second.
Any conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
87. 86, ladies and gentlemen, other than 10, 11, and the sewer force main, and 12,
35,
35.
and 35.
the comment, it's just the comment.
$10, 11, 12.
10, 11, and 12, I think, are outstanding for tomorrow.
Joe, I think this is the first time in my history of being in finance where somebody's used the word alluring.
Could I have a copy back?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
No,
here, I
no,
got
no,
a
no,
stack here.
Yeah, we
I passed
We
the
can
whole
share.
pack down.
We can share.
No, I have plenty. They all ended up at the end.
Sorry,
I
Cliff,
mean,
I'm reaching over you.
for what it's worth, I mean, I tried to write this actually thinking back to, I think, a debate
Yeah.
discussion we had, what, a month, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I tried to focus on things that were as factual as I could craft them to be, without sort of too much anyway, letting my own disdain for this article creep through. So anyway, that's kind of what I wrote, and I still think it's kind of long for one of our comments, but
I actually kind of like that it's long and that there's, spaces and that it'll take up a big section of the warrant so that somebody doesn't flip past it, because this is a big deal, I mean, it's not quite half of what our, general fund operating budget is, but it's almost, and people should pay attention to it. And if it doesn't get called, or it will get called, but it deserves to have some discussion. So I like that it's a big comment.
And I like the detail you've included. I thought this, considering our earlier discussions on this, I thought this is a very balanced comment. Joe, I thought you did a good job on this.
I mean, I guess I feel like, you go to the second paragraph, I mean, I think it's basically, as in a concrete way as I can. I mean, I think it's just a bad public finance idea. And really, number one, I think, is really the strongest issue. I mean, this is sort of raising money without any particular defined purpose for it, even though the first year you have to define it. But so I thought that was really the strongest issue. The second one, and Stephen and I had an email back and forth on it. I mean, maybe it could be written better, but I mean, I think I think it's sort of a fact that, at least a real life observation that, that the real issue is political. If you can have the political will, you can get past almost anything. And we don't have any financial constraints as a town. I mean, we have borrowing capacity, we have a great credit rating, we could raise taxes, borrow money to a much greater extent than almost anybody else in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's really just limited by people's willingness to vote for that, not that we're financially hampered, is what I was trying to say.
Right. And I think that is what you do say, but I think if that were the case, if everybody was aware of the town's borrowing capacity, if everybody knew those things, then maybe we wouldn't have years-long debates about things like the housing bill. I mean, we're talking about $1.2 million a year over the next 10 years. $12 million could be raised, as you suggest here, relatively easily if it was put to the voters that way. But we have these overrides, and we have things like the housing bank transfer fee come up because it's not apparent to everybody that if you want to do something, you can go get the money to do it. I mean, everybody wants to solve housing. Just as a for instance, it's not only about that, but we jump through hoops to do things because, well, I don't know, but I don't think we do it just because we don't have the political will to tackle a problem.
So you're saying, well, part of it then is what you're saying is that the vast group of voters don't really understand the finance, which is not a surprising thing. They don't really understand the finances of the town, or the fact that the town has, compared to almost every other town in Massachusetts, has a lot of financial strength and could, if you're willing to raise your taxes, we could pay for anything.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Louis is the envy of all town managers, I'm sure.
Listen, when I mentioned this article at a Cape Cod managers meeting, I was embarrassed to mention it, because they're like, are you serious? I said, yeah, I'm serious. Citizen proposed it went past.
And then, just to continue on, number 3 is sort of stating something that we all know, that our tax base is really supported by the summer people for the most part. And then number 4 was sort of an interesting thing. I got this email from Debbie Dilworth. I'd asked her for some, because of the 8,500-ish or whatever it is properties that don't get the residential exemption, I was curious how many were owned by Nantucket entities, people. And so she did a slice and dice, I guess, of her data, and by searching for billing addresses that are here on the island, she came up with 2,325 properties that are presumably, I guess there's a high probability, are owned by Nantucket residents and would not get the residential exemption. So I may be a little, I don't want to say, I think my arithmetic was good, but using Dickler's numbers and this 2325, I said, well, so a big chunk of properties are going to have to pay a 43% increase in property taxes because they're not going to be able to take advantage of the residential exemption. And so it's not, his claim that this doesn't cost residents anything is false.
Brian, do you have any substantive adds to this from a financial policy perspective that might not be?
Well, can I see? I haven't did you email?
No.
So I can read it.
The only suggestion I'd make, Joe, on some of your wording is on number 2, Nantucket does not have a money problem, period. I would take out it has politics. And then just go to if the voters at town meeting decide to pursue a project, because by definition you're suggesting everything is political and blah blah blah, and which is absolutely correct. However, I don't know that in a comment it's helpful if you just deleted that part of the sentence. At least that's my observation.
So if I just change, I just
Does not have a money
Nantucket does
problem.
not have. I edited my own. Does not have a financial capacity problem. Period.
Yeah.
And personal preference on my part, but I would, on number 2, trying to flip it a little bit so it's perhaps a little less negative, but maybe starting with Nantucket has great financial flexibility or great flexibility to either raise taxes or borrow money to fund projects. Period. And maybe take Nantucket does not have a money problem and make that the concluding sentence in number 2. And then you can say, switching it from being sort of negative to positive, projects do not fail, so, just a reword there.
And I think that that's the strength of the article, is that Nantucket does not have a money problem. It can do something like this. And the fact is that voters don't know that this money could potentially be available.
So, David, you would actually, I like that. So you would read something to the order of Nantucket has great flexibility. You would start by saying Nantucket has great flexibility to either raise taxes or borrow money to fund projects. Nantucket does not have
Then projects do not fail.
Projects.
Do not fail at town
projects
meeting.
not fail because Nantucket needs do not fail because needs each other. They fail because voters are not convinced of the value or benefit of the proposal.
Nantucket does not have a money problem.
And I could just you could do without to get voters.
Wouldn't it also create a problem, because if you
So
have
we're
a-
going to be the finance committee that writes a comment that says Nantucket does not have a money problem. That's going to be in the history books. Those are the guys who said. That's the group who said.
Maybe we could say it more artfully.
The only thing that I would say is that.
Poor Libby's epileptic over here.
No, I'm just, yeah. well,
She can't wait for her next group town meetings.
It's not, it's, the
Town managers.
2,300 properties that she's mentioning are properties that have an island address that don't qualify.
Correct.
But that could be a second homeowner who has an island address that they use for their mail for their second property. It's not necessarily all islanders that.
Or an attorney
Or it
who
could be they have
receives
their
tax
mail
bills
goes
for the
to an
trust.
island.
No.
So it's not necessarily all island residents that's the only thing, because we can't distinguish who they are.
Right.
Because all it is just, it's everything outside of who qualifies for the exemption but has a Nantucket address that
Right.
doesn't qualify for it. So the mail could be going to Attorney Glidden's office for me, but it is a second home for me, but because it's going there, it doesn't qualify for the exemption because I don't meet those qualifications, but it has a Nantucket address. So I don't know how you parse that, but it's not necessarily, it's not 2,325 property necessarily
Parse
owned.
that, though?
No, she can't. There's no way for us to.
I don't, yeah, it was just on a zip code, David.
Yeah. Oh, we can parse it the zip codes, so we don't parse who owns where it's going to.
But a list of, at the risk of.
And my
sounding-
suspicion is that there's quite a bit of it going to attorneys on the island, for people that are second homeowners here. But, I mean, not every second homeowner has it.
So could you just say there are 23, 25 properties on the island that cannot utilize,
The residential exemption.
yeah, instead of saying owned by islanders?
So then
No.
every rental property would be subjected to this increase in taxes.
Correct. Because they can't get the residential exemption.
All right, so then we have a problem with low rentals. Now we just increased everybody's expenses by 43%.
In
So if
any trust where you don't have a beneficial interest, or you're not a trustee
You have to
with
have
a
the trustee with a beneficial
beneficial
interest.
interest is not eligible, so, you know, there are a bunch of, I suspect there are a bunch of people with irrevocable trusts that they're no longer beneficial interest owners that are also year-round residents.
Do you have the list of 23, 25 properties?
It's just by zip code that are not eligible. We just run it by Nantucket zip code, not eligible, not with the code for the
Just by name.
You don't get 15 Union Street, Nantucket, Joey Fondamont's kind of thing.
We just run it for not eligible for the.
So that would include all like conservation foundation properties.
We may take out open space on that. I think we do. And you can leave it. It's just I don't know. I don't know how many are exactly.
No, so how about if I just reword it to say there are 2,500 properties on the island that cannot utilize the residential exemption, period.
Well-
Taxes will increase on those properties an average of 43%. Let people fill it in, I mean.
Well, now you're underselling the number, right? Because there's a lot more
Well-
properties that can't
It was
get the
8,500.
exemption.
So once you take out the owned by islanders, you're actually putting it back with the 8,500.
Then maybe you change it to say with Nantucket addresses that cannot utilize the residential.
Well, because what you want, what I want
Yeah.
is for the other voters who might own rental properties to say, wait a minute.
Right. So that might be.
Well, yeah,
if
maybe
we put
just
the
say that.
Nantucket addresses that can't utilize it, and that would be that would be fair and accurate.
With Nantucket, with island addresses.
But if the point is to, make people who have rental properties and commercial properties, et cetera, aware that they'll be paying this, then maybe just say that.
For example, if you own a rental, if you're an islander who owns a rental property, your taxes are going up 43%. Explicitly spell it out.
There are 2,325 properties with island addresses that cannot utilize the residential exemption. Those property owners will experience an increase those property owners' taxes will increase an average of 43%. I can make this smoother.
That works.
And when he has his formula, I mean, if you have a house, say, down on Halbert Avenue that's worth $25 million and one that's on Hooper Farm Road that's worth $500,000, there's a big difference between 43% more of the Halbert Avenue versus so I don't know what kind of.
Well, I think, Cliff, to your point about the effect on low-income or low dollar, however you said it, rentals, I don't think the effect is great. You know, if a duplex that has 2 3-bedroom apartments is worth $1 million, and it's paying $3,300 in annual real estate taxes, a 43% increase is not going to have a significant impact on what you have to charge for rent. So, you know, if that was your concern, then I don't think it should be a concern. Just about the island addresses thing, just say that, I mean, they all have island addresses, so I don't know how you want to make people aware of what you're saying, that they receive their tax bills there.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever.
Are there any other public financial policy issues? You've had this discussion with Cinder and others, I'm sure.
Cinder was amazed. Cinder was amazed that this was coming forward. We honestly really haven't. We didn't run it by Moody's. I don't. If anything, it would probably reduce our reliance on more because we'd be raising it, so it may not actually be necessarily a really bad thing, but I don't.
Are you aware of any other town in Massachusetts who's had this?
$30 million road.
Okay.
So, Brian, a $30 million tax levy override, that means that it's perpetual. It stays.
It's forever.
It's forever.
Until
So essentially, we're just raising our taxes. I mean, he's got it set up so that he's softening the blow or even totally eliminating the impact on year-round residents. But essentially, this is a citizen trying to raise taxes.
He's looking at the opportunity, because in his mind, there's an opportunity lost every year we don't do this. I will say that I spent a long time talking to the proponent of this and suggested on many occasions that the solution may not be entirely the way that it was presented, and that it was probably a utilization of all available tools to us, being debt exclusions and then a smaller targeted override to fund some of the things that.
Right, like if somebody came with a plan to, affect a solution to the lack of affordable housing and said, I need $30 million, then that's a plan that maybe people can get behind. But, your point is great. Number one here says it all, I think. You didn't attach any purpose to this money. You just want to raise money because you think we can do it. That doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
But on the other, not the other hand, there's a lot of hands here. One of the other points that I think is worth considering is that maybe our taxes are too low. Maybe we need more money to run this town. And I think that there's a lot of good uses for this money. It's not right to say raise $30 million and then we'll figure out what to do with it. But maybe we should be having a hard conversation or take a hard look at maybe we ought to be raising more than we do.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I mean,
I think that's time's coming, though. I think it's closer.
Which was kind of my point to the proponent when we had the conversation, that this mix may be different than, that you may support using debt exclusions as a targeted for the building versus keeping permanent money raised every year. And in the end, that the debt exclusion for everybody, what everybody wants to accomplish, might be smaller than what it is. Or the over. That was kind of where the discussion was. But in the proponent's mind, we're losing, every year we don't do this, we lose the opportunity to raise $30 million. And that's not a good thing to do.
So how do we have public meetings about this and not let the unions know?
well, I mean, and just the fact that it is sort of a Robin Hood structure, that's what really drives me up the wall. I mean, that he somehow is absolutely bold about, I'm going to raise taxes 43% for all these rich folks that he thinks are rich folks. And I'm rigging the game because I can, because of the way the the residential exemption works, so that, you know, me and all my friends who live here full-time don't have to bear any of this cost. I mean, I think it's freaking outrageous.
Yeah, and the timing of the fact that he, you know, just became a year-round resident is not lost on me.
Yeah.
It's not lost in him, I think.
Yeah. You know, but I think the town did this to a certain degree with the sewer plan a year and a half ago. I think going for Shimo first and leaving Nantucket and you know, Millbrook out of it, you know, that was intentional. There weren't voters in the room who were affected. There were a significant number of voters in the room at that town meeting who were affected by that plan. It wasn't more appropriate then. I do think that, you know, completely shielding or creating this shield for year-round residential exemption qualifiers is inappropriate.
Agreed.
Well, that's why I wrote the last paragraph, and I tried to be as sort of diplomatic as I could, but my concern is this sort of goes, you know, we have sort of a crazy bonfire at town meeting, and people think this is great, and they just, I mean, admittedly, it wouldn't necessarily lead to actually raising the money, but put a lot of...
the first step, because I think if it passed at some point, I forget the time frame. Wouldn't we have to have a ballot if it passed?
Yep.
We'd have to do a special, we'd have to do an
Well,
election.
if the selectmen
If the selectmen
wanted to put it on.
Okay, so it doesn't automatically go to a ballot. Okay, that's good.
But some of your other...
I mean, the reality is, this year, we're gonna spend 28.8 on enterprise, plus another 6 on the general, you know, retained earnings funds on capital. So we're gonna spend almost $35 million. I mean, it's not like it's 0 or it's 30. I mean, that's, and we're going to raise most of it out of, we're going to raise pretty close to 30 of it
outside the levy.
outside the levy. So, you know, to some extent, his argument, you know, is obviated by the fact of what it is that we're doing. And I don't think anybody here thinks that this number is necessarily going to go down in the subsequent years, given what I think we've got facing us. And that may be worth a point, which is, you know, proposed and adopted by the finance committee is $36 million worth, or whatever the two numbers are, of capital and investment, of which 28 is, we're asking voters to, you know, is outside the levy.
Okay.
You know, some of it is paid for by user fees, so it's not totally a tax levy. You know, the water company and the sewer.
Yeah, but it's still revenues generated by taxpayers and residents. All right, all right, any other, I mean, maybe the easiest thing is I'll go and create a version 3 and send it to you and Stephen, and
That'd be great. And
you can
settle it
wordsmith it some
tomorrow,
more
is
and then
that
send
okay?
it out to Libby and, okay.
Good job, Joe.
Yeah. Anything else? Andrew, anything? You've been sitting there quietly.
For me?
Planning board's done with all their,
We just have 2 comments, that's it.
okay.
Is this our last thing? The comment on 35?
Yeah. Except for 10, 11,
Tomorrow.
12 tomorrow. Yeah, but we have some of that stuff already.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's short.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Anything else?
I'll make what I took down happen today, send this around again probably sometime in the morning tomorrow, hopefully, or
Another review.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Thank you so much.
Shaboom.
Thought we already did that.
I also
This
like
is
in
like-
the
this is
motion
like
that,
my last
suggest
wife.
that the
I know,
town
How much
but
more
we
money
have
do you
the rest
need?
of 12 in, don't we?
More.
Strategic plan to work against
Yeah.
it.